Here we go again. Here we go again. Make sure the YouTube woke up here. And then we will jump right in. I hope everyone is well. Happy Music Monday. Happy Monday in general. Happy holiday season. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Hope you did something cool. Somebody's cold. Here's Lucy. I'm not wearing black today. This is navy blue. But Lucy still kind of blends in a little bit. But you can see her. Lucy's chilling because she's cold. This is what she does when she's cold. And sometimes she just doesn't in general. But especially when she's cold. She was not as baggy. That's not a word. Baggy. I don't think that's a word. But she was not as persistent in begging for food last night as she typically is. Or this morning. And it's because both times she was just kind of snuggled up with my fiance and myself. And she was like, yeah, this is, I know eventually you'll feed me. I'm cold. So yeah, it's a little chilly right now. We're going through another cold streak here in Southern California. I know those of you who live in parts of the country who have real winter, you're very concerned right now. I can feel it. I can feel, oh, it's cold, Ron. Did it go down to 40? We're so worried for you, Ron. As we shoveled out our cars today. We're so worried for you, Ron. Hey, I grew up with that stuff, all right? Paid my dues. Anyway, a couple things I want to get to. First of all, thank you so much, so much to everybody who came out to the shows this weekend. We did some shows in Southern California this past weekend. Friday night, we were in Ventura at the Ventura Harbor Comedy Club. Saturday night, we were right in Los Angeles at the Dojo of Comedy, Sycamore Tavern. And it was kind of like an end of the year, final local show of the year. And some of our best friends were on that show. Jimmy Dore did a set. Steph Zamorano did a set. Rick Overton did a set. And it was myself and Graham premiering the 2020 Progressive Comedy Tour. So it was so fun to bring that in with some of our buddies and all of you. Thank you to everyone who showed up. Edwin, you tweeted me. First of all, Edwin, it was awesome to finally meet you in person. Thanks for coming out. And Edwin said, I thought I saw Tiffany, the lead singer from the band Fire Tiger, in the audience on Saturday. You most certainly did, Edwin. Tiffany was there. And also James, the keyboardist for Fire Tiger. He was also there. So yes, you saw Tiffany and James from Fire Tiger there. Friends of the show, friends of mine. Fantastic band. And Edwin recommends their song, Way to My Heart. Way to My Heart. Check out Fire Tiger if you haven't yet. You can just find them on Bandcamp or on YouTube, wherever you get your music. Fire Tiger, no gimmicks, just fire and tiger. And Way to My Heart is the track that Edwin recommends. Edwin, thank you for doing that. Also, I got some thank yous to give for the holidays. First of all, Trendiest Dabbers, thank you very much for the pain oil. I picked up the pain oil that you sent me this weekend. I have not tried it out yet, but the next time I have pain, I will try that oil, and I will let you know how it goes. Thank you very much for sending that. Thank you very much for sending stuff for Graham, Jimmy, and Steph as well. I delivered their oil to them, and thank you for sending that. Lauren and Brian, thank you very, very much. Lucy, in fact, you have a thank you to give too. Here's what Lauren and Brian said. We are patrons. Thank you very much for your patronage. This show would not exist without you. But wanted to give you something extra for the hilarious Lucy patron post that we both love. And of course, the very important political commentary you deliver. Thank you so much, Lauren and Brian. I appreciate that very much. And they gave me a gift card for Petco for Lucy. So see that, Lucy? You got a gift this holiday season. She's chilling this morning, guys. She's chilling this morning. And I also have to give a thank you to Megan for sending, almost knocked over my coffee there, for sending me this book. Thank you very much, Megan. And here's what Megan says. Dear Ron, longtime fan of yours. Keep up your great work. I'm a supporter of PM Press's monthly book bag and thought you might enjoy this book more than I would. Looking forward to the Progressive Comedy Tour show in Seattle. I'm looking forward to that as well. Happy holidays to you and yours. Take care, Megan. Thank you very much, Megan. Happy holidays to you as well. I appreciate that very much. And thank you for being a part of PM Press's book club. PM Press is a radical book publisher out of San Francisco. I'm a big fan of their work. And they table at our shows in San Francisco, or at least they did last year, and I hope they'll come back this year. I love PM Press. I love what they're up to. So thank you very much, Megan, for this book. Lauren and Brian, thank you very much for the pet gift card. Trendiest Dabbers, thank you very much for the oil. And I wish everybody a happy and wonderful holiday season. And thank you so much for thinking of me. It is incredibly thoughtful of you. And Lucy says thank you too. She ducked down a little bit. She's cold. So let's get into the news of the day. Joe sends this. Joe, my editor with the mostest, sends this. And it really turned my head because, the Afghanistan papers were published by the Washington Post, which, first of all, a lot of people are speculating, why did the Washington Post publish this? They're in bed with the CIA. Why did they publish this? For anyone who did not get a chance to check that out yet, the Washington Post published these Afghanistan papers that pretty much just straight up confirm something we already knew, that we have been lied about. We have been lied to about the Afghanistan war since day one. I know you're shocked. I know you're like, Ron, really? The United States would do a preemptive war? The United States would enter us into a war that wasn't winnable, that we had no reason being in, that there was no reason for it to happen whatsoever, and they would just lie about it to make it happen because the military-industrial complex is a scam that's getting rich off of our lives? Yes, that has all been confirmed, in case you had any doubt. So anyway, that was all published, and now they're saying some people ought to stand trial for this, and I agree with them. So here, let's get to the headline here. Let's bring Rumsfeld in. So Ro Khanna calls for hearings on U.S. officials who lied to American people about endless Afghan war. So here's the quote. The bottom line is that top military officials and civilian officials have known that the Afghan war has been unwinnable and have been misleading the American public for 20 years. I mean, isn't this shocking? You just define a war by some concept that's ongoing, like terrorism. We have a war on terrorism, and it doesn't work out. Isn't that shocking? Shocking that when you just designate this war against this abstract, terrible thing, you don't win. That's interesting. That's interesting. And then you just kind of go, we're going to invade all these countries. Ugh. All right, so Representative Ro Khanna on Wednesday said that the Washington Post's explosive investigation, the Afghanistan papers, showed the need for a congressional hearing, and that former Pentagon Chief Donald Rumsfeld should be among the current and former top officials called in for a reckoning before the American public. Publicked. That's a verb of sorts. All right, so Khanna made the statements at a House Armed Services Committee hearing. He began addressing Secretary of Defense Mark Esper by summing up the Post report from Monday. And so here's that quote again. The bottom line is the top military officials and civilian officials have known that the Afghan war has been unwinnable and have been misleading the American public for 20 years. Isn't it amazing? 20 years. And amazing is not the right way to put it. But 20 years, nearly 20 years, we have been in this war. We are in Afghanistan. Nobody knows why. Well, we do know why. It's for resources. And it's so blatant. That's why we're there. Donald Trump even said it. He even said it at one point. He was like, we're going to stay in Afghanistan until we get their resources, right? And then people were like, whoa, you don't say that. I mean, yeah, that's totally what we're going to do. But you can't say that. You're not supposed to be totally upfront about what our military-industrial complex is doing. You're not supposed to be upfront about the fact that this is just about exploiting resources around the world, and this is about profiteering via war, which, by the way, Smedley Butler summed that up for us in the 30s via the book War is a Racket. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. But you're not supposed to be upfront about that. Come on, Donald. You got to be subtle. Okay, so here's what Esper have to say. Esper said it was up to the committee on whether or not to call a hearing, but I do know this much, said Esper. The story spanned multiple administrations, multiple uniformed and civilian officials, and I think it's good to look back. Yet, Esper said, I think at this point where I'm looking is forward, and forward tells me the path to success, the win, is a political agreement between the parties on the ground. But don't you think we have to have some accountability so we don't make the same mistake again, asked Khanna? I like Esper has some great logic here. It's in the past. It's in the past, so why should we do anything about it? I mean, I think we just need to look forward. That makes a lot of sense here. Hey, there have been a bunch of war crimes committed, and our politicians lied us into this illegal war. And now we have more to work with because of these Afghanistan papers. It's time. It's time for justice. But it happened in the past. I don't know. I mean, it's come on. That was then. This is now. We gotta start thinking about the new Afghanistan. What's Afghanistan looking like now? How do we agree on the ground? That's what we got to focus on. That's the key to success. Not going after war criminals like Donald Rumsfeld or George W. Bush or Dick Cheney. Let's look forward. Come on, Ro Khanna. Don't be a buzzkill this holiday season. What are you doing? Huh? If we don't learn from history, everybody gets to stay in Afghanistan. Isn't that how the saying goes? Right? That's how the saying goes. If we don't learn from history, we get to stay there. So we'll see what happens here. And some of you guys have responded and be like, no, let's not end with Rumsfeld. Let's get them all in there. Let's get Cheney. Let's get Bush. Let's get everyone. I'm with you. Absolutely. I think Rumsfeld's a good place to start. I think that's a good starting point is Donald Rumsfeld, because that guy was kind of like, I guess in many ways, the nucleus of it all. I guess actually, if you had to start somewhere, and and I know again, this is all kind of like in response to what's available right now, as far as, okay, this is the paper we can point to, and we're bringing this person in because of it. I know it's all kind of in response to that, but I think in the most perfect scenario, the first person you would get is Cheney. I think Dick Cheney. I think in many ways that guy, along with like all of his shares in Halliburton, that dude was the big architect of this thing. He didn't work alone, obviously, and they all had a hand in it. Powell, Rumsfeld, Cheney. I think Bush in many ways was just the puppet. I mean, he went along with it. He was fine with it. He's a war criminal who should be in jail. But I think in many ways he was just the puppet for the rest of them. Why? Because he was the least intelligent out of them. I mean, the rest of them were diabolical and scheming and knew what they were doing, which was evil stuff. And they knew that. Bush was cool with the evil stuff. He has no moral compass. He's just not that bright. George Bush was genuinely not that bright of a guy. I mean, how do you fail up your entire life and wind up president? If you're George W. Bush, that's how. And he was probably the worst president in the history of our country. Definitely in the top 2. It's interesting to me. I mean, the one thing I'm hoping that all this brings to the surface, I mean, other than trials and people getting thrown in jail, which I'm not going to get my hopes up for that, but fingers crossed, right? Is that some people will start to remember what the Bush administration really did, what they were really like, and this rehabilitation of people from the Bush administration will end, because it is so sickening. It is so sickening that the Bush administration, we've rehabilitated the Bush administration. When you hear Nancy Pelosi, oh, I yearn for the days of George W. Bush, where they lied us into Afghanistan and lied us into Iraq, lied us into illegal wars, gave us the Patriot Act, brought this country to its knees, gave these horrible tax cuts that Obama then continued. Oh, I yearn for those days, says Nancy Pelosi, and we're rehabilitating all these criminals from the Bush administration. And they're part of the resistance, baby. Richard Painter, all these ridiculous characters from the Bush administration. Oh, they changed now because they talk nicer than Donald Trump. Maybe stuff like this getting published will help people remember. As Gore Vidal says, we live in the United States of amnesia. I think in many ways that's true. But maybe people will start to remember. This is what the Bush administration was. It was the most repulsive administration maybe ever in the history of this country. Let's not rehabilitate these war criminals. Because, what the age-old saying really is, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. That's the age-old saying. So we'll see what happens here. I applaud Ro Khanna for bringing this up. I'm glad that people are making some noise about this. And we'll see if the committee can get any hearings in. It would be amazing to see Donald Rumsfeld in court. And hopefully they all deserve to be in jail. I mean, that is the biggest understatement I've made so far this year. It's got to be that Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, they all deserve to be in jail. So we'll see what happens here. I'm certainly not getting my hopes up. The military-industrial complex is a strong beast. And, when it comes to the military-industrial complex, well, most Democrats and Republicans alike are complicit with it. So we'll see. But, Joe, thank you for sharing that. And we'll keep an eye on this. All right. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here. And this is from... Let me get it up here. This is from Tim Bob Diddy. Tim, thank you for sharing this. And I like your name, Tim Bob Diddy. So Tim Bob Diddy shares this with me. This takes us to Oakland, California, the northern part of the state, which, by the way, Oakland, California, they decriminalized shrooms and they banned facial recognition software. Pretty cool, huh? Oakland, California, decriminalized shrooms, banned facial recognition software. I got to be honest, though, guys. I think they could have compromised. Here's what I think they could have done. I think they could have done this. They could have said, okay, police, you can use facial recognition software, but only if you're on shrooms. I think that would have been a great compromise. Like, who are you looking for in this database, officer? I'm looking for a Caucasian male with a melted face and green horns. That would have been interesting, right? Anyway, all right, so check this out. Boom, there's an ad. You're welcome. So an Oakland councilwoman wants to put homeless on a cruise ship, but the port is not on board. Huh? Play on words there. Did you see that? They're not on board? Huh? All right. I guess they said this idea can walk the plank. Come on. All right. So Oakland City Council President Rebecca Kaplan wants to bring a cruise ship to the city's port to house up to 1,000 homeless people, an idea officials at the Port of Oakland called untenable. At Tuesday's council meeting, Kaplan told council members she has been contacted by cruise ship companies about providing a ship for emergency housing. Homelessness has spiked in Oakland in the past 2 years, with an increase in the number of unsheltered people from 1,900 to 3,200. Wow. That is quite an increase. That is quite an increase. So they're saying that if they use this cruise ship, they can get up to 1,000. They can get 1,000 housing units overnight. So, something like this, I kind of have a mixed response to, and I think that's sort of, the way most folks would kind of dissect this. On one hand, we have to do something about obviously we have to do something about housing. And I think it's a good thing to look at all the resources we have available to us. I like the idea of different types of housing, of alternative forms of housing. And if this cruise ship is just a big ship that's not really being utilized at all, why not use it for something good? I see that side of it, and that makes a lot of sense. So it's like, okay, that's a cool thing. They're thinking outside of the box. They're thinking outside of the ship even to do something about homelessness. All right, so that's one side of it, and I certainly see that side. The other side of it is like, okay, well, we have a huge homeless crisis in our entire country. Certainly not every town has a random cruise ship laying around. This is not a permanent, sustainable solution for homelessness. Instead, we have to look at what's going on in our community. Why is there not affordable housing? Well, because the housing market is just running rampant. And there are no protections for people whatsoever. Another reason is because wages are being disseminated. They're being destroyed. So people cannot afford to live. 44% of homeless people have a job. 44%. Nearly half of all homeless people are employed. And a lot of them are employed full time. Or they're underemployed at the very least. They're trying to work full time, but they can't. So, that's another thing. That's another piece of this. And just being like, hey, we have a cruise ship. And by the way, the people do need to pay. They need to pay based on their income. Is how they need to pay to live on the cruise ship. So, I think we need to take more steps to address homelessness. We can't just be like, hey, here's a cruise ship. We knocked that number down. there needs to be more steps need to be taken in every community to do something about our housing crisis in this country. And if we all did something in our municipalities, well, then we could be looking at a different country, right? So there's that perspective of it. The other perspective, of course, hey, let's utilize every resource we can to try to help combat this thing. And if there's an underutilized resource that is a big cruise ship that you can house people, let's do it. So I get that too. It kind of both makes sense. Hopefully this isn't like, hey, here's a ship, we solved it. Hopefully this is like, hey, here's a temporary thing that's going to help a little bit. And here's what we need to continue to do so that we don't need to put homeless people on a cruise ship, so that everybody can have proper housing. And housing is a human right. I repeat, housing is a human right. Housing, totally for sure, a human right. And that's what we need to get to. So, I applaud thinking outside of the box. I think that's important, but let's not think this is a long-term solution, because it really isn't. So I get that, but I do applaud this person for thinking outside the box, trying to do something. And I do think that, alternative forms of housing, I mean, it definitely has its place, because we have issues of space. So I like whenever like there's these mini houses that we're doing, I think that's kind of cool. So interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Tim Bob. I appreciate it. So we got a Music Monday story here, and this is from Truth to Tweet. Truth to Tweet shares this Music Monday story. Truth to Tweet shares a lot of articles on this show. False to Tweet, not so much. But this takes us to Tennessee, my old stomping ground. I used to live in Nashville. A lot of you guys know that about me. Check this out. Dolly Parton statue may replace KKK leader memorial at Tennessee Capitol. If we want to preserve history, then let's tell it the right way. So former Ku Klux Klan leader and Confederate soldier Nathan Bedford Forrest has been memorialized with a statue in the Tennessee Capitol building since 1978. Isn't that amazing that that's when it went up? 1978. That's when they put up a statue recognizing a Ku Klux Klan leader. A few decades later, local legislators are finally realizing a grand wizard should probably not be honored. It took us a minute. Guys with the Tennessee legislator, it took us a little bit of time, but we realized, maybe this guy. I don't know if everyone's a fan. I don't know if everyone's a fan of this Nathan dude. I had heard he put out some good albums. I don't know. I thought everyone would be on board, but turns out he was leading the KKK, and we can't. I mean, maybe not everyone that lives in this state's a fan. That we're getting this inkling. I don't know. Maybe we need to run some focus groups. Maybe we need to have some longer conversations about this. It took them this long. Anyway, all right. So they're looking to replace it with a new statue, and Dolly Parton is a possible option. It's a big decision to make, one that should be thought over carefully. Well, maybe the statue of who to replace it with, that should be thought over carefully. But getting rid of the statue, that should be a no-brainer. It's time to get rid of the statue. This is not about, quote, history. This is not about preserving history. This is about these statues were put up to send a racist message. Same with these Confederate flags. These things were put up to send a message and to send a hateful message. And it's time to evolve. It's been time. You want to worry about preserving history? Fine. Put that statue in a museum. Put those flags in a museum. There you go. Put them in a museum of history, where we recognize, hey, not all of our history is something to be proud of. Well, in fact, a lot of it isn't. So here's what a representative has to say. If we want to preserve history, then let's tell it the right way. Right now, there are 8 alcoves in the Capitol. 7 are filled with white men. How about getting a lady in there? My daughter is 16. I would love for her to come to the Capitol and see a lady up there. What's wrong with Ann Dallas Dudley getting in that alcove? What's wrong with someone like Dolly Parton being put in that alcove? Faison is right. Women should be represented in the Capitol. When it comes to halting praise of a racist KKK leader, though, it seems obvious. that maybe they should honor someone who's not white too, says the article. Okay, interesting. Totally. I mean, I like Dolly Parton. I'd be cool if a Dolly Parton statue went up there. I'd be totally cool. We'll see what happens. But hopefully the big no-brainer is that they get rid of the Nathan Forrest statue. That's the big no-brainer. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't honor this guy. Isn't that great? That's the worst of the article. Here, let's go over it again. I mean, the article is supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, and it's funny. I mean, I like it, but a few decades later, local legislators are finally realizing a grand wizard should probably not be honored. Somebody made a phone call. Somebody made a phone call, and they were like, I had a crazy thought this morning. I was having my oatmeal, and I was like, this guy, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe it's time we move a little forward. I don't know. Call me crazy. People kind of realize this. This isn't bad. This might not be a good thing. We should probably do something. Brilliant. Well, we'll see what happens. Thank you for the Music Monday Truth to Tweet. And, I'd be cool with a Dolly Parton statue. Dolly Parton wrote some amazing tunes, done a lot for the state of Tennessee. I've never been to Dolly World. I never went. I would drive by it all the time. Because, when I lived in Nashville, this was a couple years ago, and I was what you would call a road comic, which is exactly what it sounds like. I was a comedian who just made my living on the road. I would go from club to club to club to college to wherever else, and I would perform. And I pretty much I traveled about 45 weeks a year, and Nashville was my home base, which was, a good home base to have because you're literally smack dab in the middle of most of the most populated parts of the country. So anyway, it's a good time. So there's that. And I went past Dolly World a bunch, but never stopped. Maybe one of these days. All right. So we're going to go to net neutrality next. And this was shared with me by from the Reddit subsection. Mr. Puma Koala shares this. So this is from our Reddit subsection, which, by the way, is just reddit.com/r/GetYourNewsOnWithRon. And here's what's going on. To have a quick refresher here, net neutrality got gutted in 2017 by the Trump administration. Net neutrality, of course, is that policy that designates the internet a Title II, which means it's a utility in our lives, and it needs to be treated with equal traffic priority. Content creators cannot pay to have their content load faster. The internet has to be treated like flowing water. All website gets equal prioritization. This assures a free and open internet. That policy was gutted by the Trump administration and repealed by the FCC. Now, since then, the Save the Internet Act has been proposed, which is basically a three-page piece of legislation that just reinstates our net neutrality laws that were cemented on the book since 2015. We've had net neutrality since the advent of the internet, but it was cemented into law in 2015 in the formal sense. So it just brings those back. It just rolls that back, says, hey, we're putting net neutrality back. This had unanimous support in the House. It had enough support in the House, and they're trying to force a vote on it in the Senate. They tried to do that last week. It received very little coverage, and it was shot down. The Senate would not go for it. They would not have a vote. Chances are Trump would veto it anyway, but they wouldn't even force the vote on it. So here's what's happening. Also, here's another thing that happened. The courts ruled on net neutrality. So we took this to the court, saying that the FCC can't repeal net neutrality. The court ruled that, in fact, the net neutrality ruling was okay. But what the court also ruled, and this was a good part, the court also did rule that it's okay for states and municipalities to pass their own net neutrality laws and to build their own municipal broadband networks. So that was the good part of the court ruling. The fact that they upheld the FCC repeal of net neutrality, that was the bad part. But the good part was they said that states and municipalities can pass their own net neutrality laws. Here in California, we have a great net neutrality bill that should be moving forward and should be, pretty much cemented. And New York also has a net neutrality bill. Here's the deal. If a couple big states like California, New York, if they get net neutrality laws, it's pretty much going to save the front line on net neutrality, because all these cable companies, they're not going to be able to unroll these anti-net neutrality packages if places like California and New York have net neutrality laws that they have to follow. Because they're like, well, we want to unroll these packages that screw net neutrality, but if we can't sell them in California and New York, that's hurting our customer base. We can't do anything now. So all states need net neutrality laws, and whenever another state gets it, it's a good thing for everybody, even if you don't live in that state. So that's what's going on. But some groups filed an appeal over the net neutrality ruling. So a number of web companies and advocacy groups on Friday last week filed an appeal urging a federal court to rehear a decision upholding the FCC's repeal of net neutrality rules. They are requesting that the full D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals review the decision from a 3-judge panel in October. Mozilla, which was the original lead in the lawsuit against the FCC, said the ruling conflicts with both the Supreme Court decision and a prior ruling from the D.C. court. Their petition says the judges misinterpreted legal precedent over the agency's regulatory powers. The petition was filed by Mozilla. Okay. So the 2015 net neutrality rules classified ISPs as common carriers, similar to telecommunications providers, who are not allowed to discriminate against traffic. Ajit repealed those rules. So now there's no restrictions on ISPs against blocking or throttling traffic, though the FCC has argued that the most discriminatory behavior would be blocked by existing antitrust and consumer protection law. If that's true, if antitrust is just going to take care of everything, which, by the way, that's not true, by the way. We've debunked that on this show in the past. That's not actually how it would work. The FTC would not oversee that type of thing. But if that was true, why are they worried about net neutrality laws then? Why are the cable companies so against net neutrality laws if they would have to follow those laws no matter what? So they're saying, like, well, because of antitrust, we wouldn't be able to do anything that violates net neutrality. Okay, well, then what are your problems with the laws? Why should there not be a law then protecting net neutrality? Why are you against the internet as a designated Title II if you're saying that's how you have to treat it? Because that's not the case. Because they're not telling the truth there. If somebody came up to you and goes, hey, I would never kill anybody. Why do we have laws against murder? Would you be a little skeptical of that person? Would you think, hey, maybe Creepy Pants Magoo over here plans on doing something terrible? All right. So alongside fellow petitioners, this is getting back to the chief legal officer at Mozilla, Amy Keating. Alongside fellow petitioners, we are filing for rehearing in response to the D.C. Circuit decision on net neutrality handed down on October. As we said then, the fight is far from over. The decision raises issues of exceptional importance to protecting consumers in the open internet, and we look forward to continuing the fight to preserve net neutrality as a fundamental digital right. Cool. We'll see what happens here. Thank you very much for sharing this. Tim Bob Diddy. When I see Tim Bob, I keep wanting to say Time Bomb because it reminds me of Time Bomb. And I'm a big Rancid fan. They, of course, have the song Time Bomb. So I keep wanting to say Time Bomb. And by the way, Jack sent this to me. Staying in the spirit of net neutrality, Jack sent this to me. Here's an op-ed on net neutrality. Like I said, net neutrality was in the news a lot last week. Well, it wasn't a lot. It didn't receive a lot of coverage. On the blogosphere, people talked about it. The corporate media ignored it. They always ignore net neutrality. But the blogosphere was abuzz about net neutrality a little bit. All right. So here's an opinion piece that Jack requested that I dissect. So Jack, here I am dissecting it for you. And I've not read this yet, so we're going to go one chunk at a time. On second anniversary of net neutrality repeal, don't forget how the left cried wolf. Okay, first of all, right here, don't forget how the left cried wolf. That's making the assumption. Now, Washington Examiner is a right-wing outlet. It's not just the left that is for net neutrality. Over 80% of American citizens are for net neutrality. That includes people on the right, people on the left, and everything in between. So right here, trying to say like it's just the left that's for net neutrality, that is false. That has been proven false over and over again via comment sections, via people demanding net neutrality to the point where they crashed the FCC website. Even a couple Republicans are for net neutrality now. Some Democrats aren't even. So to make it out like net neutrality is just some partisan thing, it's not. Is the left maybe talking about it the most? That's possible, yeah. But first of all, just making it out like it's just the left, that's not true. And crying wolf, that's not true either. Because we've already seen some effects of a post-net neutrality world. Ask the firefighters in California where Verizon throttled their data. And they could get away with it because we don't have net neutrality. And there's other, for instances, where AT&T has experimented with what they can get away with in a post-net neutrality world. Look, it's not like we're going to wake up tomorrow and the internet's going to be totally different. It's going to be a slow boil. They're going to take a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit until the internet looks like cable television 2.0. And yes, that's the world they're preparing for. Why do you think all these new subscription streaming services are popping up? HBO Max, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus. Actually, I'm not sure if there's an ESPN Plus. Don't quote me on that one. But Disney Plus, HBO Max, those are all happening. Why do you think that's happening? It's happening for a number of reasons. And one of them is just cable television is dying. So I'll concede there. But it's also because they're anticipating a world where the internet just looks like cable television 2.0. And these subscription services owned by these corporations are the only place people can go for content. They're anticipating that world. So no one's crying wolf here, Casey. Casey Given, writer of this article. No one's crying wolf, and it's not just the left. So right there in the headline, couple things. So today marks 2 years since, and this was over the weekend, today marks 2 years since the FCC rolled back the Obama-era internet regulations, misleadingly known as net neutrality. Okay, first of all, yes, we got net neutrality on the books via the Obama administration, but they did not invent net neutrality. And what I'll say to the article's credit, they actually do acknowledge that. All right, so let's go to this next paragraph. First, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. In 2010, the Obama-era FCC had applied net neutrality to ISPs across the country. For the 20 years of commercial internet history up until that point, almost every major provider had offered open access to the internet without throttling. Okay, so to their credit, they're at least acknowledging that Obama didn't invent net neutrality in 2015. Some people like to make it out like that's the case. That is just completely false. Like, that's just not true. Obama did the right thing about net neutrality at the 11th hour when public opinion pretty much forced him to. Same with Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler, Obama's FCC guy, that guy was a cable lobbyist. He didn't want to give us net neutrality. The public made him. All right, so I at least respect that the article kind of acknowledged the history of net neutrality, didn't make it out like, we didn't have it until 2015 when Obama. Did you really think the internet? Here's what they get wrong. For the 20 years of commercial internet history up until that point, almost every major provider had offered open access to the internet without throttling. Okay, that's because we had assumed net neutrality. There were net neutrality rules. They just weren't cemented into law. They just expected ISPs to follow them. And in the early days of the internet, net neutrality was always talked about. There's been digital rights groups who for years wanted to get this cemented into law, where they're saying no one's messed with net neutrality yet, but there's no law telling them they can't. We just kind of have this thing out there that says, hey, people are going to follow net neutrality. It was written. It was there. It just wasn't cemented into law. So what happened was eventually in 2014, one of the cable companies was like, screw this. We don't really have to follow this. They took it to court and they won. So then, but what the court told the FCC was they were like, look, you just have net neutrality written. There's no reason ISPs have to actually follow this. But if you just designate the internet a Title II classification, which means it's a utility and not an information service, a utility has to be treated like the phone lines or running water. If you designate the internet as a utility in our life, which it should be designated as such, it's our main communication vehicle, well, then you can have net neutrality. Tom Wheeler at the FCC didn't want to do that. Again, because he was a cable lobbyist. He was like, I don't know if that's necessary. But the public said, yeah, buddy, it's necessary. We're going to leave so many comments for net neutrality. We're going to crash your stupid website. Isn't that beautiful irony? And so he gave us net neutrality, solidified on the books by designating the internet a Title II. And Obama pressured him to do the right thing at the 11th hour. That's what happened. So this idea that we didn't have net neutrality for 20 years, that is false. That is just false. Net neutrality was written. It was assumed that it was going to be followed. And basically nobody challenged it in court. And when Verizon did, well, then all the things that digital rights groups have been screaming about for 20 years, and you can go back to the history of free press, look at the stuff they were talking about back in 2004. All the stuff that they warned about came to fruition. because big cable won that lawsuit, because there wasn't any actual policy protection for net neutrality. It was just written and it was like, you're going to follow this. So it's false to assume that we didn't have net neutrality since the advent of the internet. We have. Okay. 4 years later, a federal court overturned the order, ruling that the FCC had no authority to enforce net neutrality. All right, so that's what happened here. All right, so this is all changed 2 years ago this week when the Trump administration's FCC under Ajit Pai. Okay, so despite how wonky the tech, blah, 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 and now they're talking about the Save the Internet Act, and they're talking about all these analogies people make. Sadly, the Democrat scaremongering continues to this day. Since March, Senate Democrats have been crying wolf in a desperate attempt to pass the Save the Internet Act to codify net neutrality into law. Senate chatter and White House says. So this article's main thesis that people are crying wolf is just based on, well, we haven't seen the effects of a post-net neutrality world yet. First of all, we have seen some of it. There have been, for instances, and we've covered all that on this show. Second of all, the reason for that is because we're holding the front lines. That's one big reason. We're holding the front lines. There's a bunch of, they're battling net neutrality out in court. So it's like, well, we haven't seen the effects of a post-net neutrality world yet. Yeah, because they're battling it out in court. And another reason we haven't seen the effects of a post-net neutrality world yet on a large scale is because it's going to be a slow boil. They're not just going to completely change the internet as you know it overnight. That's not how it's going to work. So that thesis is easily debunked. And the other thesis that's easily debunked that we did at the top is that we haven't had net neutrality since the advent of the internet. We have. All right. Okay, the internet should belong to the American people, not major corporations. That is why the Senate has a duty to vote. All right, so here he's quoting people who spoke up for Save the Internet, and here's their response to that. On the contrary, in the 2 years since the repeal of net neutrality, more than 6 million people have gained access to the internet. Internet speeds have increased as well. According to the FCC, the number of Americans lacking access to a terrestrial fixed broadband connection meeting the FCC's benchmark has decreased by more than 18%. Okay, so a lot of that has to do with the fact that the internet is just becoming more and more commonplace in our lives, A. B, ever since the gutting of net neutrality, more and more municipal broadband networks have sprouted up, meaning cities are taking the internet into their own hands and they're building their own networks. A recent Harvard study that has been cited by the Bernie Sanders administration has shown that virtually 100% of the time, a city-owned internet network offers higher speeds at a cheaper price than big cable is offering. So the fact that people are getting better speeds now has largely to do with the fact that people are fighting back against the net neutrality repeal. And one of the ways they're fighting back is by cities and municipalities building their own networks. So basically, so there you go. That's why that's happening. Another thing is, big cable got all these bailouts. They were supposed to bring in jobs and they didn't. They cut jobs instead. And when you look strictly at big cable, you will find that speeds are going down and you will find that jobs are also going down. So the fact that more people are getting connected to the internet has to do with A, the internet is just spreading in our lives. It's just catching on more and more, and basically everyone knows how to use it at this point. And B, city-owned internet networks are popping up everywhere, and they're offering better service. And that's in response to the repeal of net neutrality. All right, so this article goes on to say, that's not to say that regulatory improvements can't be made. The ping-pong policy landscape that has existed since 2010 with net neutrality going in and out of enforcement is certainly not ideal. I agree with that. That's why I actually favor that we build city-owned internet all across the country. I want to see every municipality get it so we can end the net neutrality battle once and for all. Bipartisan legislation to end the debate once and for all is certainly warranted. I disagree with that because we have solid net neutrality policy. We don't need to mess with it. That's what net neutrality is. That's what net neutrality does. We don't need to overcomplicate it by making these fake net neutrality bills, which is what Republicans have tried to do. But the emphasis should be on the bipartisan aspect. Well, bipartisan is code for the Republicans have a really bad idea and Democrats are going to help them sell it. So I disagree. We put bipartisanship on this altar it does not deserve to be on. We should reject lazy attempts at scoring political points, such as the hyperbolically named Save the Internet Act. How is that trying to score political points? Over 83% of Americans, I mean, I guess if you're saying over 83% of Americans want it, so it would score political points. Okay, that's true. Yeah, if you do something 83% of the public wants, it's going to look good. Okay, but maybe 83% of the public wants it because it's a good freaking thing. Sometimes it's a good thing when government actually listens to public opinion. And by sometimes, I mean all the time. Hey, they're doing this thing that everybody wants because it's a good thing. Well, they're just trying to score political points. Okay, I don't care. They're doing what the public wants. Weird way to look at it. All right. So I guess that's about it. That's about all that's in this article. They're at least acknowledging the problem a little bit, but their interpretation of what net neutrality is and why it's necessary, and their argument that, first of all, we have had net neutrality since the advent of the internet. The reason there are faster speeds is because of municipal broadband spreading. And if you actually look at the numbers for big cables, services are getting worse and employment's going down. And it's because they're just trying to pad their pockets more. And net neutrality designates the internet a utility in our lives, which it needs to be delegated as such. All right. Let me see what you guys are saying. And that is how we will end today's show. I'm good. All right. And guys, first of all, tour dates, I got them. 2020. It's 2020 now, guys. My last big thing of the year. I'm going to be in Hawaii with the Jimmy Dore Show, but that show's already sold out, but I hope to see some of you there. That's December 27th in Hawaii. Can't wait for it. Tour dates for 2020. I got them. February 8th, Tucson, Arizona. February 29th, San Francisco, California. March 12th, Orlando, Florida. March 14th, Miami, Florida. March 13th, we're working on Tampa. Are you in Tampa? Do you want to see us there? Do you know of any venues? Email me at romplacone.com. April 10th, I'll be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. April 24th, Seattle, Washington. April 25th, Portland, Oregon. July 11th, Chicago, Illinois. July 12th, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. All those tour dates, except for Pittsburgh, are with Graham Elwood for our stand-up comedy tour, the Progressive Comedy Tour. Those shows have been a blast. Please come see us when we're playing a city near you. We just confirmed Louisville. We just confirmed Detroit, Michigan. We've confirmed Cleveland, Ohio. We're working on Cincinnati. We should have that finalized very soon. Nashville, Tennessee, we're coming back. Atlanta, Georgia, we're coming back. And we'll be coming out east too. New York City, we've confirmed. Actually, I'll say the date now, September 10th, New York City. Should have those tickets available soon. And we'll be coming back to Boston. We'll be coming back to Portland, Maine. We've never been to Portland, Maine. We're trying to come to Portland, Maine. We're trying to come to Burlington, Vermont. And if you want to see us in your city, go to romplacone.com, email me. We'll see what we can work out. We're going to be staying stateside in 2020. But in 2021, I'm going to be touring the UK, England, Ireland, Scotland. Going to be touring there in 2021. But 2020, it's going to be all in the States. Minneapolis, Minnesota, we're coming back. Anyway, all the dates that are available now, romplacone.com, and we will be announcing a lot more over the next couple weeks. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/romplacone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content, including my album. My album is just available for download. You get dialogues between myself and my cat, Lucy. All kinds of fun stuff. That's for a give what you can level, and you're really helping me expand this show. I want to start doing mini documentaries next year on municipal broadband and city-owned internet. I think that's the best way to get the word out and continuing to build this ground game. I know a lot of you have started efforts to bring municipal broadband to your city. Some of you have scored meetings with your mayors. Some of you have started a task force. Some of you are working with the DSA. That is all awesome. I'm still fighting for it here in my community of Pasadena. I want to do a better job of documenting all of this. I want to start doing providing better resources for people to expand this movement. but I need help to do that. I need camera people. I need editors. I need producers. If you are so able, patreon.com/RonPlacone, even $1 a month goes a long way. And guys, it is Music Monday, so we got the polite contributor. The polite contributor has something to say. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace. Hey guys, it's No Way Vader, or New Wave Vader. Oh man, I'm really hungover. I went to some killer shows this weekend, and I'm just pretty, yeah, I'm feeling pretty gnarly. My new power duo is going pretty good, and my death metal project is going pretty good as well. But what I want to tell you about today is holiday themed music. It's the holiday season. What are you listening to this holiday season? Well, I'll tell you my favorite holiday track, the only true holiday song that matters to me, that I really feel speaks to the human condition and our ability to love, is Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. Now, I've met Leonard a couple times over the years. Rest in power, Mr. Cohen. He was a big fan of the dark side, but when Palpatine started getting weird, when he was all like, oh, we got to be more glam. Oh, I'm going to shoot these lasers out of my hands. And then, the Return of the Jedi album was spectacular. People loved it. And then we just started doing derivative nonsense. Do you know what the dark side was up to post Return of the Jedi? No, not really. I lost my hand. I got the new one. It shreds. I shred even better now with my new hand. But the dark side, I had to bail. Leonard Cohen, not a lot of people know this, but he was training to be a Jedi at one point. He eventually bailed, decided it wasn't for him, but he was definitely in the Jedi school with Luke. Again, I could never get on board with Luke's songwriting. I know you guys are like, dude, it's your son. I mean, sometimes like parents and children shouldn't work together. And that was one of those, for instances. I can't, Luke's trying to make some good music. I just never feel like he really got there. And, he reached out to me when the dark side was really going downhill. He's like, dude, I got these projects. There's some new people catching up. I have a school now. I mean, we pretty much can pick any of these band members we want. And things didn't work out at his school. That this guy kind of went nuts and went over to the dark side. I'm just indifferent to it all now, man. I just want to hear the tunes. And that's really all I'm about. But yeah, I recommend Leonard Cohen, Hallelujah, this holiday season. Don't forget about the true condition, the true human condition, about how we can love and persevere. This has been New Wave Vader. And shout out to the guy that runs this show, whatever his name is. He likes me the best because I just ask when I can go on. I'm like, hey, man, it's Monday. That's my day. I'm going to talk about some holiday music. It's the holiday season. I'm going to mention a tune for the holidays that I recommend to everyone. And is that cool? And he's like, yeah, usually the contributors just hijack the stream from me. And I'm like, well, dude, that's just not my game anymore. I had my angry phase in the 70s. I'm just over it now. Thanks to the music of Leonard Cohen, really. All right. I'll see you guys next Monday.